everybody, welcome back to Tyman on Tap. This is our Veterans Day special. We are filming actually on election night, so this is a very patriotic episode. And I should have wore like a red, white, and blue shirt or something, or maybe like dressed up like Uncle Sam or something, but I didn't, unfortunately. But anyway, so welcome back. Today is the 4th of November. We have a great guest tonight. We have WPA's own Bruce, who is an Army veteran. We're going to talk to him about what he's up to now, about being a veteran, touch upon what he did as a soldier in the U.S. Army, and other cool stuff. So now, you can learn more about our guest on TymanOnTap.com, which I believe is content on it about our guest, or Alan would have the correct title. Use our hashtag TymanOnTap. Go to Facebook/TymanOnTap. Go to Twitter, TymanOnTap Show. YouTube, TymanOnTap. Alright, I think that's it we have for the slides. We're also on Stitcher and on iTunes for your podcast enjoyment. We're also on WPA.TV, where you can watch us right now. If you're watching us live, our first airing is at 10 o'clock on Thursdays. You can watch us online, or you can watch us on Channel 99 or Channel 18. Your choice. Just find us. All right. So let me introduce our guest for tonight, Bruce. Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good. So, you're an Army veteran, and you work at the studio, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't actually work for the studio.
Yeah.
I do produce a show here, and on occasion I help out a bit.
Okay, so let's talk about this show you produce. What show do you produce? So the cross promotion here.
I produce Center Ring. It's a wrestling talk show. Center Ring has been around since 1996.
Wow.
And we decided all the way back then that, like, the big companies, now there's WWE or TNA, they have their own multi-million-dollar marketing budgets. They don't need a public access show to promote them. So what we've been doing for the past 18 and a half years is promoting the local independent shows.
So what are some local independent wrestling stuff?
There's PWA, Pro Wrestling Academy. It's run by Joseph von Schmidt. That is based out of New Haven, but they're moving to Hamden, and they play all around the state. They also have a working contract with the Connecticut Chiefs football team.
Okay.
So for pre-show and halftime show, they do a wrestling show.
That's interesting. So like, is it open air football team, or is it arena football? Like, where do they?
They've played in a few different places throughout the state. They did, their last one was in Milford.
Okay.
But before that, they were in East Haven and Hamden.
Okay. That's cool. It's interesting cross promotion, a little football, wrestling, and one.
Right. There's also RWA, or that's in Rhode Island. RCW, Revival. I'm getting them mixed up.
Yeah.
It's Revival.
Yeah.
That plays a lot of it in Massachusetts, but also in here in Connecticut. There's NEW, Northeast Wrestling. They do a lot of work with the Waterbury Police Athletic League.
Okay.
And they also do a few shows, mostly in Massachusetts, but throughout the whole tri-state area. And then there are other shows outside of Connecticut that we push as well.
But so you did a lot of focusing, or you focused a lot on the independent shows. Have you had a chance to meet people who started independent in this area and became big, or have you met any big guys since because of this show?
Well, if you watch TNA, you would know who Velvet Sky is.
Okay.
Well, she's one of the top female wrestlers on TNA.
Yeah.
She started here in Waterbury at one of our local shows.
That's awesome.
We also have some. They're not on TV now. They're like semi-retired, and they live here in Connecticut. Bob Backlund.
Yes. Everybody knows Bob Backlund.
Right. Former senatorial candidate.
Yes.
Bob Backlund. Chief Jay Strongbow used to live a few houses down from my friend.
That's cool.
We also have from ECW, Jason Knight. If you look around.
That's cool. Does Sergeant Slaughter live in Connecticut?
I honestly have never met Sergeant Slaughter, so I don't know. I hear he lives because he works at WWE headquarters.
Well, the only reason I asked that is because at one point, my mother, when she was younger than I am now, worked at Bradley Airport, and my father would come in and visit her because she worked second shift, and in came Sergeant Slaughter, and he just needed to rent a car, and he didn't have the proper identification on him, and he's like, "You can't trust me," and my father said to him, "Well, Piper says I can't." So that was kind of funny, but so yeah, it's interesting because of WWE being in Connecticut, right? You get a lot of those older guys
Right.
around the Stamford area, right? And and if you live in Fairfield County and Linda McMahon is running for election, you may get Triple H knocking on your door.
I haven't had that, but
Yeah.
that's probably because I don't live up in that area.
Yeah, 'cause supposedly, in 2000, so it was 2012 was the last one. So 2010, he went door to door on election day and got out the vote. That's what he was doing. So if you happen to be close enough to Stanford, there was a chance you saw Triple H knocking on your door. So that's just kind of funny. So like sometimes like these big stars, right? You forget that they're like human beings that have like stuff other to do than wrestle, right?
Yeah, they have real lives that are outside of being a 6'4", 270-pound monster.
But still, when your billionaire mother-in-law is running for Senate, I don't know how normal that is yet either. It's a different type of different, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But all right, so we're gonna take a break and then we're gonna come back and we'll talk about something other than wrestling because I could probably sit here all night and we could just talk about the 80s and the Attitude Era and stuff like that. But we'll talk about other things when we get back. Hey everybody, welcome back to segment number 2 of Tyman on Tap. We have Bruce. How do you pronounce your last name? I've been avoiding it, so it's been difficult.
Haag.
Like there's a famous politician, Haag, right?
Yes.
Are you related to him?
No.
Okay.
Not that I know of. Although if you go back far enough into our ancestry, it's possible.
Well, if you go back far enough, everybody's related, right?
Right. But Haag is actually a German place name. There's like some field that 20,000 years ago they called Haag, and that's where the whole name comes from.
Okay.
Well, actually, in German it would be Haag.
Hagg. It's like my grandfather is he's dead now, but was Sicilian, and there was different ways to spell his last name. It was Congelos, but like I guess the real Italian spelling was with an A. But since instead of but everybody would pronounce it Cangelos, so they just changed it to Congelos with a C. So people would, or Congelos with, of course it has a C, Congelos with an O, so people pronounce it Con instead of Can.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it's just preference, right? Still the same name. All right, so you're a veteran. How long were you in the military for?
I served for about 15 years.
15 years. So did you list at high school, or how did you get involved?
At the time, I was working at McDonald's. This was 1998, and the recruiter called, and the recruiters, they're salesmen.
Yeah.
So he sold me a good deal, and I decided to enlist in the regular army as an infantry soldier.
Okay.
Which is basically combat arms.
Mm-hmm.
And I served my first enlistment 4 years in Alaska.
Was it cold?
Part of the time, I was 50 miles south of the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
up near Fairbanks.
So you've had long summer days and long winter or nights, basically.
Oh yeah, during the summer it was not uncommon to be up all the time, and you'll go outside at 2 o'clock in the morning and there would be basically like a beach party going on outside our barracks, because we'd have we have a sand pit that we do for physical training, but we also had like recreational stuff. So we had a volleyball net, so there'd be people playing volleyball and having a barbecue at 2 o'clock in the morning, where it still looked like it was mid-afternoon.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to get used to that? Did you ever get used to it?
I got used to it, I guess, right away.
Okay.
But there were some soldiers who had a difficult time, especially during the winter. Depression is a big thing, not just in the Army, but throughout all of Alaska, because it's literally dark for like a week at a time before it actually starts to lighten up in the afternoon.
Wow.
To twilight-ish standards.
So what was that like, though, just having a whole day of no sunlight? What was that, like the first time you experienced that? That must have been weird.
It was weird. For me, I was just sleepy all the time because with no sunlight, your body just is like, oh, it's time for sleep.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time just being tired. You don't really go out a whole lot because up there it gets to be about 40 below.
Wow.
As opposed to the summer where it gets to about 100.
Wow, there's a lot of a large variety of temperatures there.
Yeah. I haven't checked, but they're probably a month and a half into having snow already.
Wow.
And the same snowflakes that fall in late September are still sitting there in April when the snow starts to break up.
Wow. Wow. So did you enjoy your time in Alaska? What?
I had a good time. Being an infantry soldier, you're always doing stuff.
Okay.
Like it's not an office job where you sit at a desk and you get bored because you're typing paperwork out for 8 hours a day. It's very physically demanding. And you know, you'll go out one day and you'll just be walking through the woods for 3-4 days at a time, and then you come back and you stink but you go back and you clean everything up and you take a shower and you go from like stinking from being in the field for 2 weeks to, you know, smelling and looking like an actual human being again. So there's that whole, everything is different on a daily basis, even though there are routines. So it was very interesting, and it was I had a good time. The only reason I actually got out was because before doing that, I had the Centering TV show, and I decided to go to school to learn how to do that correctly, professionally, and possibly get some work out of that.
Yeah. And so you said you were in Alaska for 4 years, so that was 98 to 2002?
2002.
So what happened in 2002? I know you were in Afghanistan for twice. Was that when did you go from Alaska to Afghanistan, or were you somewhere in between?
No, I actually did not. I went to Thailand a couple of times while I was in Alaska, but I never actually went into combat while I was active, in the active service.
Okay.
In 2002, I came home and went to school and joined the National Guard.
Okay.
And it was as a member of the Connecticut National Guard that I went to Afghanistan the first time as an infantry soldier. We were the security force for what's called a Provincial Reconstruction Team, which is a group of, for us, it was doctors and engineers looking to rebuild. We were in Kalat, so down in the southern provinces. We built a hospital started work on an airport and some roads and bridges.
Mhm.
And like I said, my unit was the security force, and I can't really measure the success because I'm not that high up in the hierarchy of things.
Yeah.
But everybody came back, so I consider that a success.
Yeah, and that's in the South. That was like Taliban country too, right?
Yeah.
So were you working a lot with the Army Corps of Engineers at that point, or were they?
We were a joint service unit,
Okay.
so my unit was primarily all of the Army, and
Okay.
everybody else was Air Force.
All right.
For the most part.
Well, the Air Force is kind of like if the Army was cloned and split off at one point, right? Because it was like the Air Force was a part of the Army until after World War II.
Prior to separating, they were the Army Air Corps.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, they did separate and become their own separate branch.
Yeah, but it's still like the ranks and everything are like because in the Navy you have ranks that are completely opposite of like the Army ranks, right? Like a captain is much higher position in the Navy than it is in the Army.
Yes.
But in the Air Force, they're similar, right? If you're a captain in the Air Force, you're at the same level as a captain in the Army.
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
interesting.
an Army or Air Force or Marine captain
Okay.
would be a lieutenant in the Navy. A naval captain would be a full bird colonel in the other branches.
Wow, that's not confusing at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned from doing joint service projects is that in the Navy, you actually have two ranks. So what would be a petty officer
Mhm.
in the Navy would be a sergeant in the other services,
Mhm.
but they would also have a separate rank based on what their job was.
Really?
So when I was, well, I can't say the Navy has like an infantry division. That would be the Marines.
Yeah.
So one of my other jobs was broadcast journalist.
Mm-hmm.
They would be an MC2, which would be Mass Communication Specialist Level 2.
The Navy is a confusing bunch of individuals, aren't they?
Yes.
And they actually don't have bell bottoms anymore, but they used to have bell bottoms so they can take their pants off without taking their boots off, which is interesting.
I didn't know that was why they wore bell bottoms.
Yeah. So if like you're like grounding and you need to take like your clothes off, you didn't have to worry about taking your boots off, which would slow you down taking your clothes off.
That's an interesting fact.
But now they don't have bell bottoms anymore, I don't think.
No. In the 80s, when everybody else switched to the battle dress uniform, which was the woodland camo, the Navy also switched. And then in 2006, when everybody changed their uniforms again, everybody got different uniforms. So the Army had the ACUs, which was the Army Combat Uniform. The Air Force had a variation of it, but instead of the same digital pattern that the Army had, they had more of a tiger stripe pattern. The Navy went to a digital blue style uniform, which I thought actually looked pretty neat.
Yeah.
But you know, being in the Army, it wouldn't really serve me any good to wear a blue uniform.
Yeah.
And the Marine Corps actually had two separate uniforms depending on well, at the time, it was depending on the time of year. They had one uniform for like the fall and winter, which was more of a tan uniform, I guess for like the trees with no leaves. And then they had a more green uniform for the spring and summer. But now they're going through a whole transition of uniforms again.
Wow, that's confusing. Were you there for the Army when they simplified their uniforms, when they went from like having 15 different varieties of A and B uniforms to the more simplified approach they have now?
Well, when I first went in, we had the BDUs, which was the green woodland camo, and then we had our Class A uniform, which
Mhm.
was the green suit. There was also a Class B, which was the same thing without the dress jacket.
Yeah.
And then we had our dress greens, which was basically the same uniform but with a tuxedo shirt underneath for
Yeah.
formal. That was formal wear as
Yeah.
opposed to the semi-formal of the Class A. And then, of course, you have your dress blues,
Yes.
which is a really expensive and highly tailored uniform.
Yeah.
And then for other services, they had other uniforms. Now there's just the one uniform, but it's the same thing. There's a different shirt and tie for formal as opposed to semi-formal occasions.
So does the Army still wear both blue and green, or?
No, everybody's wearing. It's based on more the dress blues.
Yeah.
So it's a blue top and it's a darker blue pants with a stripe.
Okay.
Um,
Because blue is historically the color of the Army, right? Since like the Revolution, like the Army wore blue, right? The green is because of the camouflage uniforms they brought into their dress.
I believe the green was because of camouflage, although for the longest time, like the Navy and the Marines were wearing the blue
Yeah.
because of the water.
Yeah.
So the Army was green for the land, and the Navy and the Marines were blue for the sea.
Yeah.
Um,
Now it's all different.
yeah, the new uniforms are a lot closer to the Marine dress uniforms,
Okay.
from my perspective, but I'm not a fashion expert, so I can't tell you how closely matched they are.
But historically, though, the Army was blue originally, right? Like George Washington wore blue. The Civil War, they wore blue. Like that, those were blue uniforms.
Right.
So that's more historically aligned with what the Army originally was, I guess.
I don't know if that's the reason why, but
Okay.
we can go with that.
All right. Well, the only reason I'm asking is
George
you.
Washington.
Yeah, to match George Washington and Ulysses S. Grant, right? Those people,
Right.
they want to look like those guys. Presidents who are generals, but not Eisenhower. They don't want to match him because he wore green, right? In World War II.
I believe so. Yeah, I think we were wearing green by that time.
Okay. Well, I don't want to keep bugging about uniforms. It's kind of a silly thing. So you were a broadcaster after you were for your second tour.
Yes. After my first tour in Afghanistan, I decided, by that time I had graduated and got my degree in broadcast communications,
Where did you go to school?
Middlesex Community College.
Okay.
And I decided if I was going to continue to serve, that I was going to transfer into public affairs, which handles all of the media of the military.
Okay.
And I chose to be what in the Army is called a 46 Romeo, which is a broadcast journalist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up having to go back to school for the military at the Defense Information School, or DINFOS, in Fort Meade, Maryland.
So you're highly educated in broadcasting.
Not as much as somebody with, say, maybe a master's degree, but yeah.
That's cool. So, what were you doing as a broadcaster in Afghanistan? Were you talking? Was it like Good Morning Vietnam type of stuff, or like the Robin Williams movie, or was it? Who were you broadcasting to?
Well, when I went to Afghanistan as public affairs, I didn't go with my unit.
Mhm.
I was transferred into another unit that was going.
Yeah.
And their job was to run the Media Support Center, which primarily embeds media personnel with the troops. So that was my primary job. By that time, I was a staff sergeant,
Mm-hmm.
which is about as high as you can get without having a law written by Congress promoting you to higher levels. So I was mostly the office manager.
Okay. Very different than infantry then. If you were
Yes. But some of the things I did other than helping to embed the media was I was in Bagram Airfield,
Okay.
and they have the Craig Theater Hospital. And so I produced a video for the hospital in 3 different languages. There's Pashto and Dari, which were the 2 most commonly spoken languages by Afghans, and with English subtitles for Afghan patients to know what to expect during their stay.
That's cool. So you were actually doing stuff for the Afghan civilians then? You weren't just doing stuff for the military?
Right.
That's really cool. All right, so we're going to take a short break. We're going to wrap up, and we'll talk to you guys after the break. All right, so welcome back. We're going to wrap up. Thanks for coming on tonight. Do you have anything else you want to add before we get off?
Well, I would say go vote, but this probably isn't going to be aired tonight, so...
Well, yeah, and I think the polls closed 2 hours ago. Well, in California and Alaska, where you were in Alaska, people can still go vote right now.
Yeah.
Were there any actual like local civilians who weren't voting absentee ballot somewhere else in the area of Alaska you were in?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
It was pretty cold up there at this point, so I wasn't. If I was going out, it was either to go to a restaurant or to go enjoy my adult beverages with my fellow soldiers, rather than sit in and be bored.
Okay. All right. So everybody, have a good evening. Thank you for coming on once again.
Thank you.
And have a good night, everybody.
Have a good one.